Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Danisha Keating Show. Super excited to have the sheriff with us to talk about how we're going to save California. Um, this is a table talk conversation. This is two friends coming together, sitting and asking questions to understand the other person. We can't talk over each other. We can't yell at each other. We have to have like a real conversation. And I do feel like when we talk political, it can get very heated. So we're going to talk. I'm going to ask questions to him because he's running for governor. I've got a lot of questions on how he's going to save California. But again, we're going to invite you as that fly on the wall to hear how we have this conversation. So that way, when you have conversations, you know how to navigate it and have the questions ready to go, but not as a stumping thing, but to understand the other person. So I'm going to have Mr. Sheriff actually introduce himself. Go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
Oh, wow. So thank you. My name is Chad Bianco. I'm the sheriff of Riverside County. I've been in law enforcement I'm in my 32nd year now, and I've been
Mm.
the sheriff since the November election of 2018. So by the time this next election happens, it'll be 8 years. I'm married. I'm the father of four. I have
Mm.
four grandkids and one on the way. So we're happy about the new one coming.
Mm.
And, I other than my personal life, uh, my life revolves around God and my family. And
Mm.
the I look at my work as something that I'm blessed to have, and it's just something that's able to provide me and my family
Mm.
with what we've had over the years, and I'm very happy with everything that I have. I think personally, the way I was brought up, the way I grew up, and really pretty much how I am as a person, as a man, is I thoroughly get joy in my life from helping other people.
Mm.
It takes an act of Congress for me to have the strength to ask someone for help. I would never. It drives my wife nuts, but I'm that stereotypical man that will not look at instructions. I'll figure it out myself. I'll do it myself. I don't want to hire anybody for anything.
Yeah.
It's I just don't like asking for help or needing help, but I will be the
Mm.
first person in line to help somebody else. And that truly is just what makes me happy. I think that
Yeah.
law enforcement, that truly what it takes to be a successful law enforcement officer. I think that mentality and that mindset. I like to say it's a God given ability and a God given talent that I'm
Yeah.
able to do that, and that's what makes me happy. And for this next run, it truly is just going to a bigger stage. I've
Mm.
realized that I have tapped myself out in Riverside County for what I can do to make Riverside County better because of
Mm.
the things that are causing me to not be able to, and that is our state government and our lawmakers. So realizing that not only for law enforcement but every other aspect of our lives here in California,
Yeah.
we are no longer a place where your hard work and your effort and your dedication can make your life better. We
Yeah.
are being prevented from those things by our government, and that's not what we were. That's not how we were intended. That's not what people died a couple hundred years ago. Gave up their lives and their livelihood and their families and put their lives on the line for something better. And over the years, we've forgotten about that. I think we're going to talk about education a little bit, but
Yeah.
when you fail to teach the history and why we're here and how we're here, we're doomed to live it again, and that's what we see. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm at a crazy place in my life because I'm doing exactly what I want to do in provide the best law enforcement I can for Riverside County. I truly do believe this is the ultimate job for me. But
Mm.
now I'm at a crossroads of I'm willing to give that up and enter this absolutely demonic realm that I'm going into, and the pain that it's bringing to my family in
Mm.
order to make things better for all of us. So it's just an interesting time.
Yes. There's so much to unpack there, and I'm going to do my best. I'm a little person with a little tiny YouTube channel. And first off, you said yes to being on this, and I think that that's amazing because I started to notice something about what you're doing is that you're not going just for big platforms. You're actually just talking to anybody who asks you. And that's been pretty interesting because that is not what I have ever seen. I have been on the foster care side the last 3 to almost 4 years now on an advocacy realm, and getting people to talk to me is very hard. People just don't want to sit with people that don't have a big platform. I'm told that all the time. Like, you don't have a platform, that's why we're not going to be on your show. That's not why we're going to sit with you, and it's really sad. You sit with everybody. And I do believe that has to be because you're a sheriff and that you've been in this realm for a long time. Why do you sit down with people like me who don't have a big platform?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I'm not a fan of politics. I think politics is truly what's destroying our country. And our state in particular. It's not me. It's not you. It's not our businesses. It's not our consumers. It's not our teachers. It's not our students. It's not our kids. We are not destroying this state. Our government is destroying the state. So I'm not a fan of the politicians that have placed personal agendas and political ideologies above the needs of Californians. And so you're probably right in a sense that it is law enforcement, that law enforcement is not political. Law enforcement, I am here to help everyone regardless of who you vote for. And so that truly is along those lines. It probably does have something to do with it, but then it's also about who I am as a person. There is nothing dishonest or or not natural about me. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to fake it for anyone. I'm not going to change my personality for a group. I think I live my life very, very straight and narrow on between right and wrong, and religion is a big part of that for me. I think that I truly do believe that there's a big book that tells me all of the issues I'm going to come across in life, or how what I might experience, or what have we experienced in the past, and it's a roadmap of how to handle it successfully, and I do believe that. And so when people ask me to talk, I think that other politicians, they look and they want to know, well, who are you, and what are you going to ask me, and who's going to see this, and oh my gosh, it's this big thing, and they say no. Or you kind of mentioned a little bit. I don't believe in you saying that it's just you, or you're a regular person, or sometimes people will say I'm just a nobody. I just have this. There's no such thing. We are all. There is not one of us more important than the other person. And we have, over time, especially in politics, gotten to the point where you're not important enough for me to talk to because you can't help me, or you're not going to give me money for my campaign, or you're not going to help in my agenda of what I have, or you disagree with me. And that's why we failed in this country. That's why we are in a state of political identity, where we are no longer real people. We are who we voted for, and that's what you're looked at by other people. And it's a shame. And there's one thing, you talk about talking about people. You kind of mentioned it a little earlier. You didn't expand into it, but it made me think about it. We are in this position that we are in the political world, where we're fighting and we're arguing and everything else, because for the last 80 years, we have been told that we can never talk about politics and religion.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, our country was founded because of politics and religion. Yep. And we were only successful because of politics and religion.
We talked about it.
It was a very concerted effort, not for 1 year, but for decades of trying to destroy this country from within. And I think they're succeeding, because we no longer talk about religion and we no longer talk about politics. So when we do talk about those things, it's not normal to us. And so you don't know how to have a conversation with someone. If you're a Christian, you do not know how to have a conversation with a Muslim or with an atheist. And or a Jew. It doesn't exist, because we have never allowed ourselves. So then when you talk about politics, it's even worse, because politics is always taboo, and now politics is affecting our everyday lives, and we don't know how to handle it.
So there's a couple things that are going through my head, and I'm going to basically take it from a perspective of just like who I think is going to go. But Danisha, you have to ask this question. So you said, you are who you are, and you don't bow down to people. And that brings up the BLM stuff from 2020. Now, I've seen the whole video. to where I'm like, I see how people twisted this. But there was a situation during 2020 when there was a protest going on and you kneeled to the other side. That's how it was looked. Can you
Right.
explain that situation to us? Because I've seen the whole video. I'm going to post the whole video I found where you actually hear it saying, let's pray, let's do this. But what actually happened, and why is that being brought up now?
So to that, it's being brought up because I am on both sides. I am the candidate to beat in this election because both sides know that what I have to offer is something that they could never achieve. They could never match up to. So if you're going resume and who's qualified to be the next governor, I truly will be the only person on the ballot that is. So they have to attack me. The left is attacking me by saying that I'm the MAGA pro-right Trump. The right is attacking me. All of my opponents are attacking me, saying that I'm Democrat, that I don't like Trump, that I don't support Border Patrol, and that I support a domestic terrorist organization called BLM. Which is absolutely false, and they're paying for it. They're paying for you to see those things, and
Right.
they're paying for you to see a clip of something, which is a little bit ironic for me because the same people that have been saying for 10 years that the media is fake and don't believe the media and you can't believe all of this are now saying, "Oh my God, believe this,"
You're
and
like,
because
wow.
yeah, because this is what I want you to believe, and their egos and their narcissism is truly telling about them as a person. So the reality of that is, I make absolutely no qualms about my religion and my faith. And there's actually an interesting meeting that happened in 2021 when Democrats were trying to figure out how to beat me in an election, and they came up with a list of top 10 reasons why I needed to be beat and unseated in this election.
Mm,
The number one reason was because I was a Christian. That was the number one reason that Democrats don't want me there. And
yeah.
that is very, very telling.
Yeah.
And that is how it's in our mission statement from the Riverside County Sheriff's Office, and it's in my every introduction and my biography that I my faith plays a huge part in
Yeah.
my life, and I will use my faith and the beliefs of a Christian, values and all that comes with that in order to make us better
Mm,
servants to the public in law enforcement and
yeah.
and provide a better service. So back to BLM. Uh, when you take everything in context of what was happening at the time,
Right.
my life, my mission, my statements at the time about BLM, I'm one of the most adamant um, opponents of BLM. BLM is a domestic terrorist organization that was only meant to demonize law enforcement. It was all based on
Mm,
a lie. It had nothing to do with Black lives. It was about money. It was about dissension. It was about political divide.
mm-hmm.
And I was very vocal about that, even leading up to that time. But
Mm,
in the 2 days prior to that, we met with the organizers because that's how it works. If you're going to have a mass protest and you want it to be
yeah.
legal, you have to have permits. You have to get approvals from the governments to allow you to do this. And
Right.
we did. We gave them those permits. We signed off on it, but we set ground rules with them. And as I met with those organizers in my office 2 days before the actual event, 2 consecutive days in a row. When they left, we prayed before we left. And we
Mm,
prayed that everything was going to be fine, that we would not experience, that we were going to be better in Riverside County than what we were seeing on TV. So
mm,
that night, it was a protest, and for the most part, the first several hours were okay. We were there to make sure it didn't get out of hand.
mm,
People are gross. I mean, the things they are yelling about kill law enforcement and
yeah.
the vulgarities and everything else about me and about killing me and harming my family and all of those things. It's absolutely disgusting. But we are there in a professional manner to make sure that they can protest because that's their First Amendment right.
Yeah.
And I will defend someone's First Amendment right forever. So going into this that night, it started getting out of hand. We let them
Yeah.
go past curfew. Everything was going fine, but then the fires started getting lit.
Yeah.
The weapons started being thrown through the air, whether it was bottles or screwdrivers or whatever it was, rocks coming at law enforcement. And so we gave them the order that it's time for you to go. And
Mm,
with that, the organizers that you see there, you see them with me there. My
yeah.
arms around them at one point, And they asked if we could pray. They asked if deputies would pray. And they asked people around them if they would pray. And of course, the people around them were F law enforcement, F the police, all of this stuff. But there were a couple of my deputies that said yes. Some of them said no. And we started to pray. So if there's the only, and I won't say a regret. I don't want to say I regret, because I regret nothing in my life, because I look at things that happen in your life, even bad decisions, as learning experiences. So this was certainly a learning experience for me. But one thing that I wish I would have realized at the time is when we started to pray and they asked me if I would kneel to pray, that's normal for me. It's normal for me to kneel and pray. That's not out of the abnormal. So at that moment, yes, of course we will. And so we start to kneel to pray, and then was it a setup? Is that what they did? Is that how they thought they could have that? More than likely, yes. Because right after that, that's when the camera's right in my face, and then they're asking me questions and everything else. So the whole thing about this is we have to look at the totality, and you have to even look at the aftermath. Currently today, I'm one of the most respected law enforcement leaders in the country. And certainly by my department, my employees absolutely love and respect me. And law enforcement in California is overwhelmingly supportive of me, to the point where they are all supporting me in this endeavor to be governor. Yeah. That would never happen if I was a supporter of BLM, or if I kneeled to BLM. The 1,200 cops that we had there that day, they know exactly what happened that day, and what that was and what that is. And this narrative now of me being a BLM sympathizer is political theater. It is a disgusting, dishonest display from Republican politicians that have absolutely no business being in this race. And this is what they are going to try and use to somehow convince other people that I shouldn't, and there are some people I read it, it's like, that's a no starter for me, if he kneeled to BLM, because they're not smart enough to look at the totality of the circumstances. They're just believing a bullet point from an Instagram post. And people have become so apathetic and easily led by their emotions that nobody is using critical thinking anymore.
And there's so much, because when I saw the video originally, I saw the original clip in 2020, and I was just like, wow, that's really powerful that he not kneeled to them, because there was several videos at that time of white people kneeling to the black side. Yeah. And it was like, I have a lot of black friends who were really feeling a lot of stuff, and they were just like, hey, like, I grew up in California, specifically in like the Inland Empire area. It's a very mixed area, and I have always been in these race wars. And so it was like, man, I have seen this stuff happen. I know. I used to live in Los Angeles before we moved to the Inland Empire. And yeah, we've always had race wars here. It just happens. People have always gone at each other's throats. There's gang life. There's this, there's that. So when you see this, you're like, at first I was like, wow, like, okay, they're just being respectful, and they're showing the person in front of them that they care. I didn't see the full clip. I didn't see the full clip until my hairstylist, Kira, was like, you have to see the full clip of what they're using against him. And I looked at it, and what I noticed is when they said, hey, get on your knee, wasn't just to you, it was to everybody. And he's like, because, and this is what I noticed as the psychology side of me, I'm like, what's going on emotionally? And people are yelling, they're pushing forward, and he's like, get down on your knees so we can pray. And he was yelling that. And then another guy's like, get down on your knee. Let's pray. Let's pray. And then you guys do. And then there's people, he bowed down. And I was like, oh no, there were people who were being authentic. And then there were people being manipulative. And we see that this happens a lot within these moments as emotions run high. But what I have noticed since 2020 is, I first was like, BLM, okay, what is this? And then I started going like, oh, they're a little shady. This organization's a little shady. Oh, they're really shady. But that didn't come out for a couple years. But I did notice the increase in movies that were against cops. I noticed the increase in police brutality, where police officers are not safe. We see the videos all the time of police officers getting attacked. And then this was pre-COVID, I think, but we had for some stupid reason, California voted to put in less crime situations. Like we literally voted to go soft on crime.
Yeah.
And then that flipped in 2021, 2022. But we still see the police brutality really high. So as a sheriff, as a police officer, as someone who's in this field, having to protect your guys, like how in real time, how is it really as bad as we see online of police brutality happening?
The answer is police brutality that bad? The answer is absolutely no. The videos that you see of cops, you never see the entire story.
Right.
You see what a particular side wants you to see, and law enforcement is not in the business of showing you the full story because that
Mm,
involves prosecution. And if we do show you the full story, then those prosecution cases are done away with because we tainted it. We and that's the jury pool. They say if you have influenced the jury pool, then we can't prosecute this, or we're not going to win this prosecution. It's going to be overturned, or it's not a fair trial, and those types of things. But there's not the converse side, the
yeah.
fake news that we see, and the police just beating someone, or manhandling someone. I don't want to. I did use the term beating, but that is almost never ever happens. There is always something that leads up to it. What is happening and what is becoming more prominent or prevalent in society and interactions with law enforcement is the absolute the the way people engage law enforcement is with absolute complete disrespect and
Mm,
no respect for the law.
yeah.
And those violent encounters are being, we don't start them, but the
Mm,
rule of law enforcement and the rule of right and wrong and the rule of arresting someone is it's our job to win. So if
yeah.
so, for instance, this is a big deal. This is a big way to explain it. But if you bring a knife toward me and want to fight me with a knife, my answer as a cop is to pull out my gun and shoot you because
Right.
I'm not supposed to tie with you. It's not supposed to be a fair fight. It was never intended to be a fair fight. We are supposed to win. And the
Mm,
general public, for the most part, it is the law that you have to comply with law enforcement. If we
right.
are doing something wrong, there are major civil penalties that you are going to be heavily rewarded if we did something wrong in arresting you or how we handled you or something like that. But you do
Mm,
not have the right to resist. So when we are arresting someone and other people come up and try and stop us from doing that, that is what starts that confrontation. That is what makes
yeah.
that happen. When you're being arrested and you resist and you fight and try and get away, we are not supposed to treat you with kid gloves. We are
Yeah.
going to arrest you, and we have to win to arrest you. So naturally, that tells you that we're going to use more force than what you are. But
Right.
our force is dependent on the amount of force that you are using to us. The
Yeah.
resistance determines the amount of force.
Yeah.
So
You
there
can't
is
see that in a
not,
video.
you
You
never
just
see
can't.
that in the
Yeah.
video.
You can't
You,
see physically see it.
yeah, and you even have to watch. You have to look and you have to use common sense and you have to say, why did the video start there? Because it's
Mm,
obvious they were recording with their cell phone before that. They didn't happen to hit play right when that happened. This was an
right.
ongoing event that they were recording, but they didn't want you to see what that other person was doing. And so the
Yeah.
narrative that this demonization of law enforcement is a real thing. It
Yeah.
is a movement by the Progressive Party because they do not want law enforcement. The Progressive Party can't have law enforcement. What they absolutely want is one state-run government law enforcement that they can control.
Mm,
So independent law enforcement, independent police agencies, particularly elected sheriffs, are the enemy of this progressive socialist movement because they
mm,
can't have us making independent decisions for
Right.
our residents, for our voters, because they have to be in control. So there is not an increase in police brutality, and police brutality is not really an issue. What we see is what they want you to see, and then you talk about there are well over, I mean, I have over 1 million contacts with with our citizens. My deputies have over 1 million a year contacts with our residents,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably closer to 10 million or maybe even more. We only have a couple of violent encounters.
Mm.
So what we see is all across the country. Sometimes even we see videos from other countries, but we get them on our
Yes.
phone every
Yeah.
day. So it makes it psychologically, it makes you believe that this is happening all the time. But the
Yeah.
reality is, it is a less than 1%. It is a fraction of a percentage of the actual law enforcement
Mm.
encounters and the law enforcement arrests that actually end in a use of force.
Yeah. So we're seeing an increase though in police being targeted. I mean, I've
Oh,
seen a ton of
100%.
videos the last couple days where a police officer was trying to detain someone who was hitting him, and he
Yeah,
was getting pushed over by four other people, and there was like four police officers getting mobbed by like 15
yeah.
people, and I was like, are you joking me? And
Yeah. See,
that is what we see a lot
I will
of
tell
now.
you that that is not ever going to happen in Riverside County. That will not happen in Riverside County. This is happening across the country because of, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's wokeness and it's politically correctness, where you have chiefs of police that are trying to appease their city council and their city manager because they don't want to lose their job. And so
Mm,
they're handcuffing their employees literally and making their cops not do their job. And they're hesitant to get in trouble, and they're hesitant because they don't want to be fired or something like that.
mm,
In Riverside County, my deputies know that their job is to arrest bad people and
yeah.
people that are committing crimes. And anyone that interferes in that is also going to be arrested. And we do not do anything halfway. We are going to arrest you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I will tell you that we don't have in Riverside County the overwhelmingly increasing amount of incidences that other agencies do, because
Mm,
criminals know that you don't mess with deputies. You don't
yeah.
mess with Riverside County deputies because we don't play around. We take care of business, and you're going to go to jail for breaking the law or for harming us. And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
We've
No,
enabled
yeah.
these people to believe that they can fight back in law enforcement. When I was a deputy, if I said, "Hey, you're under arrest. Turn around and put your hands behind your back," they did, and
Mm.
they knew that they were caught, so they turned around and put their hands behind their back. But we don't see that anymore. Now it's a, why and no and oh, and you're not, no, I'm not doing this, and it's a fight and it's a resist, and
Yeah.
that has to stop.
It does. I agree because it's disheartening. I know a lot of cops, I know a lot of people in the military, and I'm just like, I can't, doxing's happening and all of this other stuff
Yeah,
where it's heartbreaking.
yeah,
So one of the things and it just came through my head, you're like, we follow the law, we do this, and this, and that phrase kind of gets me sometimes because the law can change. During COVID, we had a lot of shutdowns happening for businesses. And you did stand up and say, I'm not going to sit here and go at small businesses like barbershops and hair salons to shut them down. What was the driving force behind that? Because technically, I mean, it wasn't a law, but it was the governor coming out and saying, like, we're on lockdown. And we were
yeah.
one of the longest lockdown states. I think we were the last one to open
We
up.
were we were by
But
far.
why did you stand up against that? And what was the purpose of letting the businesses do what they needed to do?
Yeah, this is hard, and this is coming from what people have told me. This is not my opinion. I mean, I guess it's my opinion. It's just that I know it's probably fact because too many people have told me this. Um, there are many instances in our history where exactly what you're talking about it was the law. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of problem right now is people fall behind that and say, well, I was just following the law, or I was just doing what I was told. And unfortunately, um, sometimes that's not right. Just because someone made it a law doesn't mean that it should be a law, or that it's right and that it's unconstitutional. And people are telling me that is what I did in this instance with COVID. Is it was obviously a government overreach. It was a violation of our rights of freedom, and it was a violation of our rights of free speech, and the ability to go to church and choose our own lives, the freedom to choose our own lives. This was going against all of that.
Right.
And I stood up against it, and I stood up and said that is not the role of government, and it has never been the role of government. And while it wasn't, while they, and I use that sometimes, I told the governor, well, through his office, because he won't talk to anybody that opposes him. He's never talked to me. But I told his office, if you want to make it a law, make it a law. Tell the lawmakers to make it a law. And the reason they wouldn't is because no one in this state would vote for those people again if they made that a law, because everyone knew that it was wrong. But the problem with everyone is we're all good people. And we went along with what we believed was the greater good, even though we were giving away our rights and we were sacrificing our rights. And so someone told me one time that they wished that and they asked me the question, and it truly did come in the form of a question: what would I have done? But it was, the premise of the question was, they wished that I was in the position that I have of national notoriety. They wished that I was back in the time of the Jim Crow laws and the racism that was going on in the name of the law, because someone passed a law and said that we had to have segregation. And the question was, I don't believe you would have enforced that, and you could have been on that side of making things better, because that was obviously what we know now. Those were unconstitutional laws that violated our rights and our freedoms and everything else of major sections of society.
Yeah.
And it's true. I hope I would have, because it's the same belief. My belief is that I'm supposed to be protecting my residents not only from crime, but I really did swear an oath to defend our Constitution and our freedoms. And unfortunately, there's a part in that oath that says from domestic, not only foreign, but domestic. And, domestic, you think maybe internal grown, you don't think it's going to be from your own form of government, but at this particular time it was. And we know now, I know now, and I'm very vocal about it, that the progressive left, they say it. They don't even hide behind, the veil anymore. They come out and tell us that they are socialists. And America is about freedoms. It's not about socialism. Socialism always has been, and always will be bad.
Yeah.
And so I will fight against socialism. And when you try and take away our constitutional rights that are granted by our Constitution and God, some of them are labeled in our Constitution as God-given rights, not government-given rights. When you try and take that away, somebody has to stand up for that. Yeah. And I am in a position to be able to do that. As the governor, I will be in a position to never violate somebody's constitutional rights. I truly do value our Constitution, and I believe that our current form of government despises our Constitution, of state government. We have a president now that does value it, and typically, more conservative Republicans are for the Constitution. You're not going to hear Democrats jumping up and down saying, I want freedom, I want freedom, I want freedom. They don't. They want government control. So there's a lot of politics that are being all involved in that and crossing over that line of the law enforcement realm into law and order.
Yeah. And it's wild to me, because I have a few friends who had businesses in 2020 to 2021. And they have told me that they are still experiencing issues from that, because they were cited by the city, or their license was revoked from, Kira shout out to Kira. She is she owns a salon in Riverside County. And she said that she's still facing issues from then, but all the other salons that did shut and listened, they actually are no longer around. So she had to take a stance and be like, no, I have people, I have to feed my family. But as a small business owner now, I'm still seeing ramifications. I didn't start my business until 2021, but I'm still seeing ramifications of like the unemployment being too high, all of the other things, like we get taxed even higher as a small business. Well, I mean, businesses in general, but like we all get taxed higher. And as a small business, we can't normally afford that. So we're seeing businesses leave in droves because they're just like, we can't afford to stay in California when California can't manage its money. And we're seeing a lot of that still from the 2022
Yeah.
era of being shut down. So if how would you fix something like that? Because I know a lot of barbershops, hairstyle place salons and stuff like that, they're still dealing with those issues of having to like get their license back and things like that, and they won't they're not being able
Yeah.
to get it. How could
Yeah.
you help as a
Actually,
governor to make that happen?
actually, Kira is the only person in the state that has not got their license back. And there was
Mm,
only two licenses in the state that were taken away. It was Kira's, and it was a couple. It was a gay couple from the Bay Area that Kira and that shop, the owners of that shop, and Kira, the owner of her shop, were by far the most vocal, especially in that
mm,
industry,
yeah.
about the rights and the wrongs of what they were doing and how just absolutely ridiculous the regulations and the closures and everything else that were happening while our governor and our federal and state legislatures were going to their beauty salons. It was okay for them to do it, but by God, Kira couldn't do it.
They were
And
at restaurants. They were
absolutely,
having vacations. Like we saw it, and it was just
yeah,
like, but we can't go to our school. Like our kids can't go to school. We can't have our business open, and
yeah.
that's crazy to
So,
me.
so these two people that took to social media that were getting, or these two businesses that took to social media that were getting a very, very, very large following and were being, they had a voice. They were punished. They were punished by
Mm,
our government. Their licenses taken away, their livelihood taken away because they spoke out against what they believed was tyranny that we now know was 100% tyranny.
yeah.
And in the 5 years since, the Bay Area business has got their license back because they paid a ton of money in forced fines
Mm,
and fees and punishment because they spoke out. And
mm,
Kira is she's standing on principle, and I
right.
applaud her for doing it. And everyone in this state should applaud her for doing it because she's not bowing down to something that was unjust.
Yeah.
And it truly was unjust. I tried it's the law enforcement realm. It's our attorney general that is the one doing this, and I tried to appeal to the attorney general about how wrong it was, and this government lawfare against a business
Mm,
that spoke out against what was obviously wrong, and
mm-hmm.
she was right, and they just refused to do it. So um, we are at a position in politics, especially California, that if people don't start realizing this, that voting Democrat right now is voting socialist, and until a Democrat comes out and says I'm a Democrat, but socialism is bad, you can't vote for those people.
Yeah.
And if we do, we're going to lose our state. Our state will
Yeah.
be absolutely lost. It's going to. You can't have a socialist state in a free America because
Right.
the people that are supplying the money to the socialist state are just going to leave, and we will enrich every other state that actually cares about freedom, and
Right.
California will absolutely become a third world country.
It's wild because it's, I've born and raised in California, and I'm seeing so many issues with education and homelessness and foster care specifically. But I was looking it up last night, and we ranked 37 out of 50 for the schools. Like in our education system, we're 37 of 50. So it kind of feels like we're already there. I mean, there's so many things you've said, like people aren't allowed to speak on faith in education, which is 100% true. I've been in the education realm doing advocacy work. I'm told all the time, like, please don't bring up your faith. Like, and I still do, but it is what is it within education? Why do you think we're 37th out of 50? And
Yeah,
what can you do to fix it
we
as
are
a governor?
we're far worse than that.
I feel like,
So,
yeah, it's
so
bad.
those So when you, depending on the polling that you look at, we're last, we're
Mm,
48th, we're in the high 40s, and then when more liberal organizations do the polls where they have to make California look as good as possible,
yeah.
they massage the data and they pull from data that can make California look better because the reality of our country is California is the biggest, greatest state in the country, and they can't have California failing. The Democrats can't have California as a failure, especially when you have a governor that's running for president. That won't work for the Democrat Party, so they have to massage the numbers. We are the absolute worst, and or at least at the very bottom of the pile. From an education system that at one point in history was the best. California was the top of the education realm, and now we have fallen to the bottom because we no longer educate our kids. We have gotten to the point where we have taken test scores out of school because somehow that is detrimental to people's well-being, or somehow that is racist, or whatever it is. It's actually, it was proving that our education system was absolutely failing. It was proving that what we were doing to our kids was failing an entire generation. So they took away the test scores, so there was no longer proof.
Yeah.
The reality is only 30% of our kids can read at grade level. And if you go to minority kids, it's in the teens. 18% of black kids that are in grade school level can read at grade school level. That is an embarrassment to our school system. That is an absolute embarrassment. We are failing those kids.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to address. Why are we not addressing the failure of our education system? Because we all know it's failing. People are leaving the public education system in droves to go to private schools that better educate their kids, to charter schools that better educate their kids, and to now homeschooling, where parents are realizing that they can give their kids a better education than the school system. And when I say this, I have to be very, very careful, and I need to make it very, very clear. This is not the teachers. The teachers are not responsible for this failure. The teachers are afraid to speak up for what is right because they're afraid of losing their classrooms. They're being afraid of transferred to another district that is less desirable for them, or a hardship for them to drive, or they love fourth grade kids. Their life is fourth grade kids, and they're afraid or they're threatened of, you're going to be in sixth graders, or you're going to go to kindergarten, or we're going to move you. And so they just be quiet, they shut up. You would be amazed at the thousands and thousands of teachers that have reached out to me and said, I'm the only conservative Republican in my school, but yet I have 10 others in the same school that are telling me that they're the only ones in their school. And it's because they have been so threatened and so afraid of speaking out against what is happening from the administrative realm of our education system, the state realm of our education system. They are so afraid of speaking out because of the consequences that they're going to suffer. They just go with the flow. And it's the kids that are suffering. And the part of it, from a law enforcement perspective, is decades ago, we did not allow bad kids in school. Bad kids went to their own school. And the reality is that's how it has to be. Because you cannot learn in an environment that you're afraid of. You cannot learn an environment where you're worried about offending someone, or you're worried about, what's going to happen in class if you say the wrong thing. And when you have bad kids that are ruining classrooms, that ruins the education system, and teachers, they can do nothing about it. I had one teacher reach out to me and say that in her class, there is one kid that terrorizes the class on a daily basis, and there's absolutely nothing that they can do about that kid. Well, the kid was involved in an accident outside of school on a bicycle, a horrific break in his leg that laid him up at home for a couple of months. When he came back to school, when they knew that he was coming back to school, and the teacher said he was coming back the next day, the entire class voiced their displeasure because they said, this is the first 2 months that we have ever been allowed to learn in school. And now he's coming back, and our entire classroom is going to be disrupted again. That's a drastic example, but that is happening in every single school system. And if we keep treating people the same, we're going to have the same failures, because we will only be as good as the bottom person. Right. When you don't reward people for their excellent behavior, and you bring them down because you don't want to offend somebody that doesn't even want to try, then all we're doing is dumbing down the rest of society out of fear of offending someone. That's what's wrong
Yeah.
with our education system. And then this indoctrination into politics rather than education is science and math and reading. Those are how you make someone smarter. Critical thinking skills are how you educate someone, not a political ideology. And unfortunately, that's what we have here.
Yeah, so people listening know, like I've taught at the highest level you can teach. I was a professor for 4 years, and even at a private institution, I saw adults knowing how to get the only wanting to get the A. They didn't actually want to learn. I've talked to professors at colleges who have been stabbed with pencils. They have had chairs thrown in colleges where adults are, and they are 20, 25-year-old, 35-year-old people throwing chairs at them, getting physically hurt, threatened. One teacher I know had in during COVID had a Zoom call happening, and one of the students threatened her, and the school did nothing about it. So it's not just in K through 12. We're seeing it in the college levels as well, and it's going all the way. It doesn't matter if you're in public college or private college, it is happening everywhere. And it
Yeah,
is that we have allowed behavior to rule of like, just don't talk about it, just don't address it, just let them be, they're just having a bad day or whatever else we do, how we excuse this. But on the foster care side, what's wild to me is that I've learned, so I had my education kind of pieced together for high school. I entered in really late. Like freshman year was like the last 3 months of school, and they kind of just were like, oh, whatever, you can kind of get the A through G's, figure it out. But then I learned that 50% of foster youth are graduating from high school, while only 3 to 4% are graduating from college because the rigor is too much. But most of it comes down to the education in K through 12 being put together. So they could move 8 times and be in 3 different schools, and the school's just like, oh, we'll piece it all together, and not every school teaches the same thing. So it really, it's hurting everybody on every situation. And when you say bad kid, you're not saying like someone who's in foster care, but what you're saying is like physically violent,
yeah.
verbally being dismissing the whole class. And I think that that's super important when we look at those things. You know, and it's sad to hear that teachers are also getting fired for expressing faith, but they're not getting fired for expressing their sexuality or their ideology of what it is. I'm like, I just don't understand why. I mean, I get it now where we're at and why we're here, but it feels sometimes like it's just hopeless. And so it, you know, it is easier to sometimes just thinking about moving. But how does the education issue run into things like homelessness, crime, all of the other stuff that we see in gang life, drug use, all of this? Like we can see that this is playing a part in this. How do you see that coming in?
I honestly, I mean, this is the conspiracy theory talk, but I honestly see it as that's the mission, that's the goal. They don't want smart kids. They don't want kids that can
Mm,
think for themselves, that would question the decisions that the government's making. So
yeah.
they've eliminated the ability of our youth to actually
Hmm.
think for themselves. When I was in school, when I was in college, it wasn't, no one was telling me what to think. They were, I mean, we had especially college, you had
Hmm.
vibrant discussions and debates in class as the professor was trying to get people. He was not telling us what to think. He was telling us what everybody else thinks and how we need to come together to with a common goal, or something that we both sides agree with. That's how life is supposed to happen. But we've gone away from that. The critical thinking is gone. You're just supposed
Mm,
to believe what you're told, do what you're told, and that was by design.
yeah.
So they don't want kids knowing history. They don't want kids, because if you know history, you're not going to repeat it, or you'll tend
Right.
to learn from the past and not repeat it. So those are not being told anymore. And so our school system is about, if we educate kids, they can go out and start their own businesses. They can go out
Yeah.
and move up the ladder, and the ones that want to put forth more effort are going to move up the ladder faster, and they're going to get
Mm,
things more than the kids that are lazy, or that not are as much ambitious, or that don't want to learn or don't want to do those types of things. And the socialism aspect can't have that. They have to have
mm,
everybody equal, and you
yeah.
can only be equal at the lowest common denominator. You
Right.
can never be equal at the top. By, I mean, I say it all the time. There is a like you and I, if I'm just happy with what I have, and I'm good. I like my free time. I like surfing the internet, and I like just whatever, showing up to work and being a good employee. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. That's all great. But if you, on the other hand, are never had to be told what to do because you're out figuring it out and you're doing twice the amount of work that I am because you're ambitious and you want things better and you want to do things different and you're trying to improve and do something outside the box. You and I should not make the same amount of money. You should get paid double of what I get paid because you're doing twice the work, twice the effort, twice the desire. And when we build that mentality in that everybody's equal, we're creating a horrible place in society. And that's where the school system has got to, is there this whole thing where everyone gets a trophy. That's a disaster because not everyone deserves a trophy. And so it's when you have that mentality being taught in school, then we're in trouble. And then you have a political ideology. Back to the professor thing in college.
Yeah.
When my second to oldest kid was in college, he wrote an economics paper on. It was basically about free market and how the free market brings costs down and encourages the economy to be vibrant and all those things. And written across the paper he had to turn it in for corrections and everything else, the rough draft. And written on the top of the rough draft was, if you are going to believe that these beliefs about the free market, the highest grade you will get is a C. So if you want an A in my class, you have to believe what I'm telling you to believe about socialism and about communism being the best for the economy and best for people. You are an imperialist. And this was all written on the tops of the pages of his paper. And so he comes to me and he knew, that for us, that was, we'll pay for your college, but you're going to get good grades.
Yeah.
And
he's like,
he had
wow.
to come and say, look, I know I'm not supposed to get C's, but my professor's telling me this is all I got.
Yeah.
And that is what's happening in colleges. And then those college educated kids that are now in their 20s and 30s are now teaching middle school and elementary school of those things that they were forced to believe that are completely untrue, but that's what they're educating our young kids on. And it's sad.
It is, because so part of my story is I was a foster youth in high school, was homeless from 18 to 24. I moved 33 different times while I was in college. I worked 2 to 3 jobs and struggled during the recession. It was during 2008 through 10, which was hard. And then at 24, I took in my 5 siblings in my 1-bedroom apartment, and it was 500 square feet, little tiny thing. But then through friends was able to get like a 4-bedroom townhome. But I finished my bachelor's, finished my master's, finished my PhD, and I finished my PhD in 3.5 years. Nationally, it's about 5 to 7 years to finish that, because I was like, I need to get this done. Then started my own business, and I share my story with people. And the one thing that people say is, Danisha, the reason it happened for you is because you're white. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with that I'm white. It has everything to do with, I looked at the situation and said, I have nothing else to do except for try to make this better. And I listened to people who came before me who were like, this is how I got out of poverty. This is how I got out of that lifestyle. I moved away. I got into school, or I went and found a career, and I did it, and I put all my effort into that. And it is so wild to me that most of the time I hear it from white people who are just like, Danisha, it's not like that statistically for everybody else. And I'm like, I know that I'm a person who, it doesn't happen for a lot of foster youth. There is no statistical number of foster youth holding a PhD, but there is 1% holding a master's, which means it's possible. And that's not just all white foster youth. We're diverse in this, but we have literally had people come into this conversation and said, the only reason that you got that far is because you're white. And I'm like, let me tell you about all the hurdles that I had to jump through, just like everybody else. But it is not that I was better. It wasn't that I was safer. I had no education till high school. And so it's like, you can overcome that, but you have to be willing and wanting. And I like to use the term like I'm a bootstrapper, because it's literally impossible what I've done, and that has caused issues with people. And it is this whole thing is like I am so tired of hearing that we can't overcome, but it is hard in California, because it is that thing where I'm like, man, I as a small business make good money, but in California it does not feel like it's good money. It literally barely
Yeah,
gets us by. And I see a lot of
yeah,
people winning and doing really shady things, and sometimes I'm like, why did I, but I'm like, I'm glad I didn't do it shady. But
yeah,
there is that like, oh, okay, so it's okay to go do it that way, and then nobody gets in trouble for it. And that's
yeah.
what, like, I see that pull sometimes in my own head, and I see why people gravitate toward that. But with one last question before we wrap up, but it's like I see what for foster youth, what I consistently have to fight against is a lot of people are like, you could have given up at any point and people would have been fine with that. You could have been, I was homeless, I wasn't on drugs, I didn't do gang life, I didn't do prison or jail. But so many people have said, like, you can't encourage people to go further than that. There's just a few people who have told me that. Majority of the time, people like that I'm coming in and being like, you got to take ownership, you got to figure it out. At after 18, it's your hustle, it's your responsibility. But there are still people who believe that just because you are in foster care or you've had a hard life, that you just don't need to get there and get grow up a little bit to make it happen. What would you tell if you were sitting with someone who was experiencing like me at 18? What would you have told me at 18 years old?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I have made it my mission. I was influenced by a cop when I was 16,
Mm,
and that made a lasting impact on my life. And as a law enforcement officer, I have tried to impose that same effect that he made on me into the kids that I was coming across.
mm,
And I have to tell you that it truly does have nothing to do that you're white. That is the modern day excuse for someone else that doesn't want to try hard. Because
yeah.
if that mentality, if just because you're white, if that was true, when we were in the Great Depression, when everyone was suffering, when all these people were suffering, we should have never come out of it. But the
Mm,
difference is people knew that the harder you worked, you could achieve anything. You could better your circumstances. You had to work hard. And to me, it's an absolute disgrace and an insult for blacks, Hispanics, women, anyone to believe that you are a victim of your color or your socioeconomic status.
yeah.
Because I have many black and brown and women in this line of work that were in drug homes, that were in foster homes, that
Mm-hmm.
had horrible abused childhoods, that had horrible parents, that they could have ended up the same way. They made a decision that they were going to do something better for their lives and different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of this country. And we no longer teach that. We no
Yeah.
longer teach hard work is good. I mean, you are better than the majority of the people in the Depression because it was not acceptable to give up back then. It's
Yeah.
acceptable to give up now because it's acceptable to just become a victim and say, I'm a victim of my circumstances and I will never get better. Well, of course,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to get better because you're sitting on your couch doing absolutely nothing, or you're using drugs, or you're committing crimes, or you're just accepting a measly little payment from the government to say that you're not worth trying hard to get better. And if we would change that,
Mm-hmm.
if we as leaders are not going to start being truthful about our circumstances and our future, then we are never going to get better.
Yeah.
Because it truly does have nothing to do with the color of your skin, where you came from, your sex. It has nothing to do with that. It's how hard are you willing to work? And you said everything from my perspective, from a law enforcement perspective. You didn't break the law. You changed your friends, you moved out of that environment that was causing you to be almost held back or being okay being in that environment, and you said, no, I'm not going to do this. I am going to do something different. And so we have to get back to personal accountability in the fact that you can make of yourself whatever you want to be. Quit falling in the victimhood path of mediocrity. You
Yeah.
have to strive to be better. And then with the foster kids, they've always existed.
Yeah.
And more so in the recent past, government has taken on that role and they've taken it away from the community and from churches. It
Yeah.
was a success when community and friends and churches were taking care of kids that were in trouble.
Yep.
When the government took over that role, it became an industry for them. Anything that a government does, it becomes a money making industry and it becomes a money laundering industry. And we're seeing that with homeless. The government right now has absolutely no desire to fix the homelessness issue that we see on the streets, even though it's not homeless. That is a revenue stream that funds a completely other aspect of government that they
Mhm.
enjoy having there because that money comes back to them in their political campaigns. And we
Yep.
are not caring about the people that are on the street. And I will tell you that our social services programs are the exact same as it relates to kids that are in foster care because
Yeah.
foster care has become a business instead of a position of love
Yeah.
that kids are being taken care of. As adults, it is our responsibility to take care of kids. Kids can't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And when and sometimes people just shouldn't be parents. And when parents victimize their kids or put their kids in a position where their kids are being victimized and not given that same opportunity of love and advancement and education and progress and emotional support that they should be getting to thrive, it is up to the rest of us to do something about it. And at one
Yeah.
point in history, that was family, that was neighbors, that was friends, it was particularly churches.
Mhm.
And that's gone away. That there's those things have left and government has taken over, and
Yeah.
there is no love when government is just giving more money to foster homes that do not have proven results for the kids that are there.
Right.
And it has to, I mean, I'm not sure of the exact answer, but I know it's not government. And
Yeah.
I know from my position in law enforcement that social services is broken. I am not a fan
100%.
of child protective services. I am not a fan of just instantly taking kids away from their parents and putting them in people that don't care about them, do not love them, and are just getting money for housing them in their house at a specific
Yeah.
time. And we have to fix that process. We have to, if the parents are struggling, why are we not helping the parents? Why are we just taking kids and snatching them and
Right.
emotionally harming them and putting them in a place where they're not necessarily loved? And with that, I have to say, I know some foster families that
Mhm.
truly, truly do love the kids that they bring in and they try and do everything they can for them.
Right.
And they tell me that the state prevents them from doing a lot
Yep.
with those kids.
Yep.
And it's a broken system that
Yeah.
absolutely needs to be fixed.
It's wild to me because 64% of foster youth are taken from their homes due to neglect. And most of that neglect has been identified as like poverty related issues, things like not getting food, not having babysitters, not being watched. That was a big part of my reason of why they took me away. Um, what was so crazy is I recently got my file, and they're out of 375 pages, only about 30 pages is actually visible. And one of the things that was wild was that they cared more about my mom taking her, literally writing it every so often. She needs to take her depression medication. She needs to be in therapy over my father, who was a sexual abuser. They like dismissed it. They still put us, like my siblings, back with my dad eventually versus my mom, but they didn't actually get my mom the support she needed. She did not have community. When I took my siblings in, because it was through kinship or guardianship, I did not qualify for any funding. And so I kept asking, I keep pressing, like, why is it that we will give $2,500 to a foster family, but we will not give that to an aunt, an uncle, or a sister or a brother who steps up to take in their family member? And what I hear is, well, we don't know if they're going to do it right. Now, I know a ton of foster families. I know a ton of caseworkers who are beautiful, amazing people who really do care. But this system is setting people up to break families up so that they can have
Yeah.
people in
I
foster
want to
care. and it's money driven, and there
It,
it feeds into human trafficking, it feeds into homelessness. It's
yeah,
literally within the foster care community, we say foster care is the pipeline to homelessness, drug use, jail, and broken families. And it's
yeah.
generational, which is
I
wild
want
to
to
me.
tell you just my mentality of how I know this is broken, and the compassion and
Mm,
of really of law enforcement officers, but a little bit to me. I
mm,
was a supervisor in the sheriff's office, and in the middle of the night one night we had a call where a young girl called because her dad was abusing her, and it was physical abuse, and it was
mm,
physical abuse of the mom and physical abuse of the daughter. So we go there, and it was a daughter and three of her younger siblings. I think she was like 13, 14 years old, something like that. Dad
mm,
is an alcoholic and completely abusive to mom and to all of the kids. And the that initial call was he beat up mom, and then the daughter got home from school, and her number one role when she got home from school was to bring dad alcohol. And then so he started abusing her that night physically, and she ended up calling because she was afraid. But as we're talking with the kids, she tells me, I was there in the room. There were a couple of us that were
yeah.
talking to her, and she just said, I can't tell you what happened. I just want you to let us go because they're going to take us. They're going to take us away. They're going to,
Yep.
and this little girl, she said, they're going to take away my brothers and sisters, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be put somewhere different. And so I'm talking to her. She's like, I just want to call my grandma. So we call grandma. Grandma is 3 hours away, drive time. And grandma says, I will be there in 3 hours
Mm,
with my son, and we will pick up the kids and they will come live with us. So in the meantime, I'm trying to make this short, but
no, you're good.
CPS is now involved.
Mm-hmm.
CPS is telling me that they're not going to wait 3 hours,
Yep.
and they're going to take all these kids in separate foster families for the night. And while this goes on, I've got this little girl holding on to me, begging me,
Mm,
saying, "Do not let this happen. I can't lose my brothers and sisters. I told you this was going to happen." And
right.
so I'm saying, I'm the cops here. I don't care if we wait 3 hours. Grandma's coming to get them. So in the end, they would not give grandma the kids because she had a two-bedroom house and there were four kids. They would rather separate these kids. And so that night, it almost got violent. It kind of did between me and CPS. I physically grabbed the CPS worker, picked them up, carried them
Mm,
outside of the sheriff's office, locked them outside of the building, and told them not to come back while we waited for grandma and uncle to come pick these kids up. And they took the kids with them back to grandma's house because
mm,
CPS was going to destroy these kids' lives. And that would have ensured, if they got back together, that little girl would never, ever, ever call again that she was being beaten and
yeah.
molested because she was afraid for her brothers and sisters. And when we have a situation that didn't care about that scenario, all they cared about was the checklist of
Yes.
CPS's process. I knew it. I had already known before. I just happened to be in a supervisory role that I controlled that situation. I
Mm,
would never allow that to happen. And there have been many times since where I have stepped in and said, "We aren't doing this. I don't care what CPS says."
yes.
CPS. There are some good social workers. The majority of them do it for a paycheck, and they couldn't care less what they are doing to these families and these kids. It's just about following a process,
Yep.
and we're failing our children.
Yes. And it's so hard because like that brings up like stuff that happened with me, because it was just like that's why we never called, that's why we never asked for help, was because we were separated and there was 8 of us, so we were separated into multiple homes. And then the weird thing was, because CPS didn't put it through the court, we were then thrown back out of foster homes, and they actually say that it is actually worse to take siblings away from each other than to let them stay together. It's better for them. We thrive more when we're together. But what we desperately needed at that time was not to be put into multiple different homes with for a few months just to find out that the judge was like, sorry, you can't stay in foster care, which I never knew of until recently. But then it was like, okay, now we're going to still separate them into multiple homes instead of just putting us with our sister, who, if they had supported her, like, we would have never had to deal with that. If they supported my mom, I firmly believe this would have not have ever had happened. But there are so many things that it's like they waited. One of the things I found is that they actually, 5 months before we were put into foster homes, my mom said, please take them. And they waited 5 months and arrested her 5 months later to where she could not get custody back because of that. They purposely waited for 8 counts of child neglect before taking us away when she voluntarily was like, please step in and help me. And that to me really, like, I was like really shocked by that. And I'm talking, so many other people are like, yeah, that happens all the time. And it is the thing that changed my life was community and people. That was how I was able to raise my siblings, was my church stepped in and was like, okay, what do you need? Here's a dresser, here's clothes, here's a gift card, here's pans. And that was what changed it for us. It wasn't the government assistance, because we didn't get any of that. But I think within California specifically, like, we do need to get back to learning about the Constitution, what really is and what's not. We need to get back into learning actual school, math, science, and stuff like that. We should not be learning more about that by a teacher. But then we need community to step in to make this and change this. And I think we can do it, but it also gets discouraging when you see people just like still going off the cliff and you're like,
Yeah.
like, we know where the
Yeah,
cliff goes.
yeah, you're an exception to the rule because of who you are as a person,
Yep.
and the effort that you put into your circumstance for you and your brothers and sisters. The unfortunate part of your story is that is still happening today on a daily
100%.
basis
Yep.
in every single community that we have.
Yep.
And no one is addressing it. They address the symptom and not the cause. The
Yep.
cause is too truthful. You have to be too truthful and honest with people, and we don't want to do that. We just want to treat the symptom, and the treating the symptom is never the answer. If you just keep wiping the blood off your finger without stitching the gash that is causing you to bleed to death, you're never going to fix yourself, or you're never going to fix other people's situations and make them better. There's a crazy meme. It's a husband and wife thing where a little video where the wife has a nail in her forehead, and she's just explaining to her husband that her head hurts so bad, and he's like, let's pull the nail out, and she's saying, it's not the nail, it's the pain, it's not the nail. And unfortunately, that's funny, but
Right.
unfortunately it is very, very true that if she's trying to fix make the pain go away without taking away the cause of the pain, it's not going to happen. And I will tell you this: in your situation, I don't know anything about your mom. I don't know anything about the history that brought her to that. But the minimal effort that it would have taken to help your mom could have saved probably millions of dollars of money that was you in the system, you and your family,
Yep.
your brothers and sisters in the system, and heartache for you and
Mm-hmm.
trauma for you could have been solved very, very easy in the very beginning.
Yep. And it is, foster care is generational on my mom's side. And it
Yeah,
is because no one has ever actually stepped up to help the mom. It
yeah,
was just stay with the dad, and then you leave, and then you're on your own, and then it's figuring it out. And yes, there were a lot of kids, but there was no community. And that is the answer, is community, but community who's going to be honest with you. Because you could have community and no one's going to tell you the truth. That's not, I don't feel like that's true community. I just think that's people that you're hanging around.
that's
But if you want real community, they're going to be the person to be like, hey, you're being an idiot, like, you need to stop going that direction. I love you enough to tell you. But to fix the foster care system, too many people go, it's unfixable and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And I'm like, no, like, get the churches involved, get and churches are involved, but like really be that first contact, get family members involved, and stop relying on the state. And that's a hard truth, is that people, they're like, but my job. And I'm like, I could care less about your job. Like, you're actually causing long-term trauma to a foster youth or a person who's been abused. You're making a hard situation harder. And that's where we see is it can take decades for someone to heal from being put in just a foster care.
Yeah.
And that's been what's wild to me. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I think we kind of covered it. I
Covered a
think
lot.
it's. I hope people. I hope people watch. I hope
Yeah.
people really pay attention to, uh, maybe some of the things that I've said, but more importantly, um, not just the things that you've said, but the
Mm-hmm.
place where they were said from.
Mm-hmm.
And you, as someone who overcame all of those obstacles, it wasn't because of the government. The government did
No.
not help you overcome those obstacles. You had to do it. You had to have the support, the encouragement, the people behind you
Yeah.
that were encouraging you to do something. But then at the same time, this was your desire to
Mm-hmm.
make something different. And you can say that's a part of your family, but that's a part of your family's past, because I
Yep.
guarantee you that the foster system is not going to be involved in your future generations.
Heck no, it's not. We're not. Yeah, there's a lot. You guys, if you, I want you guys to follow along. I want you guys to talk politics and faith. I think we have gotten way too far from these conversations, and we just go, it's not my problem, it's not impacting me, but it is. If we don't vote, if we don't understand, we don't know. And then get out there, get to know people, be a part of the community, and see how you can help and be the hands and feet. Thank you so much for joining us, Sheriff Bianco. I will be posting this, and we will just, yeah, if you guys have questions, go ahead and post those below, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for joining.